that the Lord wanted to send a flood upon the earth, and he found grace with Noah, right? But at the beginning of that chapter, which we're going to see, you saw that the sons of God began to sleep, or they came into the daughters of men. So we're going to clarify that a little bit, give you a little bit more context as to what's going on there, and ultimately give you an understanding of the angels. Where do they play a part in this? So we're going to go to our first place, which is 1 Corinthians chapter 15, because it's like you're in a court of law, right? When you try to plead your case, you have to build the case. And even with the Bible, it tells you out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every matter be established. So we can't just go, right, to one place and say, okay, well, it says the sons of God, they came with the daughters of men, and from there we had giants in the land, which we're going to read it, right? But we have to put everything in its proper context. And like I tell you in Isaiah chapter 28, it tells you that if you want to get understanding on this word of God, you're gonna have to go line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little and there a little. You're gonna have to add a little bit of different places in the Bible that talks on the same subject to give you a bigger picture of what everything is talking about. So we're gonna start in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. And we'll pick it up at verse 39. And when you get there, go ahead and read, please.
All flesh is not the same flesh.
Just right out the gate, because he's actually touching on just things pertaining to this earth, right? He's saying here, all flesh is not the same flesh. Go ahead.
But there is one kind of flesh of men,
There's one kind of flesh of men,
another flesh of beasts,
another flesh of beasts. What else?
another of fishes,
Right?
and another of birds.
So when you're looking at the creation, go to Genesis chapter 1 and actually just take the time to read through it. Like, for example, I believe the birds and the fishes, they actually came from the water. They didn't even come from the land. They came from the water. That's how the Lord created them. They have a different type of flesh. And when you look at the beasts of the field, yeah, they came from the ground themselves as well, right? But even their makeup is different from us. Their hair, their skin, and so forth. It's different. And that's what he's telling you here. He's saying all flesh is not the same flesh. But there is one kind of flesh of men, another flesh of beasts, another of fishes, and another of birds. And we didn't even come here to touch on this, but it just makes me, just reading this brought me back to the idea that we come from monkeys, right? That's what they want to tell us. That's really a monkey idea if you really think about
Monkey.
it. Because they're of another flesh, according to the Bible. The Bible does not support that idea, because if it was really coming from monkeys, then at some point these monkeys got to stop. They got to go extinct, right? Because that's the natural progression of that idea anyway, right? We started from an organism that became a 2-cell organism that just kept multiplying over time, came out the water, right? And then every form that we were prior died off. So we came from some monkeys. Guess what? Eventually these monkeys got to die out, but that's not the case. Why? Because the Lord, like he saw in Genesis chapter 2, right? It tells you that he pulled man out the dirt and he breathed life into him. We were made in his image, not according to some monkeys. But this is our flesh, according to us being brought out of the dirt. And even things brought out of the dirt were still not the same as the beasts. And even of the birds and the fowls of the air, and the birds and the fishes, we're not the same as them. Right? And this is things terrestrial, things pertaining to the earth. Read verse 40.
There are also celestial bodies
Right.
and bodies terrestrial.
So the terrestrial bodies are things pertaining to the earth, to the terrain. That's us. But in addition to the bodies terrestrial, he says there are also celestial bodies. These things are from the heavens. These are not from the earth. They are not terrestrial. And what does it say? Keep reading.
But the glory of the celestial is one,
Right?
and the glory of the terrestrial is another.
And it says, but the glory of the celestial is one, and the glory of the terrestrial is another. And what we're going to see is these angels fall under this celestial category. Because these are spirit beings. And spirit beings don't die. They're not made of the dirt like mankind is, right? Give us a few years, give us a few decades, we're going to die. Right? We're born of the womb. We, in our teenage years, in our 20s, we in our strength. same way we are. They are eternal beings. They live forever. That's why even when you read in Matthew chapter 25, when the Lord created the lake of fire, he said it was prepared for Satan, the devil, and his angels, because he has to create a living death for them because they don't experience a physical death like us. See, that's their glory. They're able to live forever. The terrestrial glory, hey, we have the privilege of being able to reproduce, right? In layman's terms, some simple things, hey, we get to have sex, right? We get to not just have sex, but be able, and I'm not just saying that in a lustful state, but at the same time, the glory of that is because we get to reproduce. So if a man were to lay down with a woman, that man is be able to, like this brother touched on earlier, create seed and have a child in his likeness, in his image, after his kind. And you see that all throughout the terrestrial things. Because even all flesh, what does the tree do? What does the plant do? Guess what?
Reproduce.
It has seed, and it grows, and guess what? That tree is going to end up producing another tree. That's the terrain's glory. That's the terrestrial glory. However, with the celestial, they live forever. And we're going to see that. Let's go over to our next place. We don't need to read verse 41. I saw that, but we don't need it. Let's go over to Genesis chapter 6. Because now we're going to dive into that conversation a little bit and dissect it so we can get a clear understanding as to what it's talking about when it says the sons of God, they start to get with the daughters of men. What is that talking about? So Genesis chapter 6. Genesis chapter 6, we're going to pick it up at verse 1. When we get there, go ahead and read it.
And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth,
Right.
and daughters were born unto them,
So let's slow it down, right? And it came to pass when men began. The mic is not on. That's crazy. It isn't on. Dang. That's okay. We're just going to continue. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters are born unto them, right? And it's saying right here, men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters are born unto them. Because at this point, pay attention to the history that Moses has already relayed to us prior to this point. You had Cain, you had Abel. Cain killed Abel, right? Cain was cursed from God, but he still lived. He had a wife. He had kids. Lineage came through him. Then on top of that, you also had Seth. And it says, through Seth, man began to call upon the name of the Lord. So you had a righteous seed. We're not going to touch on it today, but sons of God can also apply to men. And I'm going to let the cat out the bag right now. When it's talking about the sons of God in chapter 2, it's really talking about the men, because we saw in 1 Corinthians 15, we don't have the same glory or the same makeup as the angels. See, we are terrestrial beings. They are celestial beings. They cannot lay down with men. They can't lay down with women. And as we continue to touch on this subject, the Bible's going to spell it out clearly. It's going to make it very plain, right? But it says, it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them. And truth be told, it's really referring to Cain and his seed, because they weren't following God. Essentially, they was cursed. And it was through Seth's lineage that you saw men call upon the name of the Lord. I believe that's Genesis chapter 4, verse 2.
that the sons of God saw the daughters of men.
And these men here, they saw the daughters of men, those that are not serving God. And what did they say?
That they were fair.
They thought these women was looking good. Long story short, keep reading.
And they took them wives of all which they chose.
And pay attention to the verbiage here. To make it very specific, it says, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And because you have a mingling of the seed, you got righteous men dealing with women of the world, what is Jesus going to say? What is God going to say in verse 3?
And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man.
Right.
For that he also is flesh.
Listen, I can't just let these people keep living as long as they are. Because at the end of the day, man is also flesh. We can't just disregard it. And do you know what comes with flesh? Carnality comes with flesh. Carnal thinking comes with flesh. People not walking according to the word of God.
So imagine, as evil as we see this world is today, and we only live in some odd years, imagine people with the same mentality but multiplying over hundreds, 200s, 300, 400, 500, 900 years. You know how wicked it can get? So much, so wicked that it repented the Lord that he's got to send a flood to wipe out everybody but save 8 souls. But he's saying, the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for he is also flesh. Yet his days shall be what?
120 years.
Hey, man, I got to cut this lifespan down. And he's talking about the sons of God here. He's talking about all mankind. So think of it. So think of this. If he's going to cut down the lifespan, how can this apply to angels when they live forever? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Read verse 4, because this is where really people jump on, because this third word in this verse. Go ahead and read it.
There were giants in the earth in those days.
Whoa, you see, brother? I told you, because there was angels that were sleeping with women, guess what? Now we got angels. Now we got giants. And that's how they came into existence. It says, and there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, go ahead.
When the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men,
right,
and they bare children to them,
go ahead,
the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown.
But you have to understand, angels have their own glory. With their celestial body, it's not possible for them to mix with women, because they're a whole different type of makeup. And you're going to say, oh, well, see, there was giants at that time, so the Lord had to send floods, and because of the floods, that's how they killed all the giants, right? Let's put a bookmark right there. Let's go over to Numbers chapter 13. Because what I want us to see is, hey, we had giants in the past, before the flood. We have giants today, and we're going to touch on that. And you had giants after the flood, most importantly. Because it wasn't the angels sleeping with men or with women that got us these giants. It's just that, truth be told, mankind, we come in all shapes and sizes, regardless. You got tall men, you got short men. And we're going to touch on that. Numbers chapter 13, and we're going to pick it up at verse 31. And when you get there, go ahead and read, please.
But the men that went up with him said, we be not able to go up against the people.
Right.
For they are stronger than we.
Because what we're seeing here, this is when Israel came out of captivity from Egypt, when Israel came out of Egypt, and now the Lord has sent out people to go spy the land, the promised land that they were supposed to inherit. So from there, the people who went out to spy the land, they're like, man, this land is indeed nice, flowing milk and honey, just like you said, Lord, it's beautiful. But this is the problem. The people there, that's what they began to fear. Even though they saw all the miracles and plays that the Lord performed in their redemption from Egypt, they feared men. And what type of men? Men they thought were stronger than them. That's what we're reading right here. It says, and there went forth, Numbers 13, I'm not in the right place. Numbers 13 and verse 31, it says, but the men that went up with him said, we be not able to go up against the people for what?
For they are stronger than we.
Go ahead.
And they brought up an evil report of the land,
right,
which they had searched unto the children of Israel,
right,
saying, the land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof.
Go ahead.
And all the people that we saw in it are men of a great stature.
Men of a great stature. What type of man? Verse 33.
And there we saw the giants,
right,
the sons of Anak.
And these weren't just all the giants. There's always been giants. There's always been men of great statures. It doesn't require an angel to do that. See, we saw giants and we jumped to the conclusion, especially because we see sons of God, and we try to put two and two together to think that, hey, it had to be angels sleeping with women, and then we got giants, and then God said to flood to kill all the giants. That's not how it worked, though. Because the next spot, we're going to see that angels, they're not given in marriage as we are as man. But we're seeing here, after they done spied the land, fear grew in their hearts because they saw men that were much mightier than them in such great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which were what?
Which come of the giants.
Which come of the giants, right? See, if this was a one-time thing where we saw angels sleeping, we don't see angels sleeping with women now. But we got giants in the land today. It's not happening now. So how? But the truth be told, it never took place. We just always had giants. And even in Genesis chapter 6, it is referring to people of stature and then also men of renown. Because you read in the time of the Tower of Babel where you had Nimrod, I believe was his name, I believe in Genesis 10, I might be saying his name incorrectly, where it says that he was a mighty hunter before the Lord, a man of renown. So it can be referring to stature, it can also be referring to status, but to be specific, we talk about men who are of great stature, we always had that. So we can't just come to the conclusion or jump to the conclusion that's talking about angels with women to get giants when it's not necessary. So finish that up and we're going to go to our next spot, which is going to put everything together.
And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight.
Right, they were so tall, they are such of great stature, we was grasshoppers in their sight. Hey, there ain't no angels here. It's just men of African countries as tall as all get out. Simply put. But let's turn over to our next spot, Matthew chapter 22, because this is going to bring everything together. Matthew chapter 22 and verse 29. Because here, we're going to touch on how there are some Sadducees who don't actually believe in the resurrection. And they're going to try to tempt Jesus by questioning him. And they bring to him a question. They say, hey, Jesus, you got a woman that married a man, right? And they didn't have any kids. And according to the law, if that woman doesn't have any kids by that man, she got to marry his brother and raise a seed to the deceased. Well, guess what? Here's a twist. He died, the brother died, and all the brothers passed as well, 7 of them, and none of them had kids. So they asked him, in the resurrection, whose wife is she going to be, seeing as she's been with all 7 brothers? And he's going to let them know that they are wrong in their understanding altogether, because things pertaining to marriage, things pertaining to laying down, they don't apply to those with the celestial bodies. So Matthew chapter 22, pick it up at verse 29. And when you get there, go ahead and read, please.
Jesus answered and said unto them, Ye do err, not knowing the scriptures, nor the power of God.
And this same statement can be applied to mankind today because we lack understanding, which is why we make statements as to, when you see sons of God in Genesis 6, that it's angels sleeping with women. Why? Because you do err, not knowing the scriptures nor the power of God. You lack understanding. Verse 30.
For in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage.
But what?
But are as the angels of God in heaven.
See, the angels of God are not given in marriage. But you saw in Genesis chapter 6 where it says that they took them wives. Well, how are you able to take a wife if you're not given in marriage? It don't work that way. See, again, you got a glory pertaining to men and the terrestrial beings, and you have a glory pertaining to the celestial beings. And the celestial beings, they don't lay down with people that are terrestrial. It doesn't work that way. That's what God is trying to get. That's what Jesus is trying to get them to understand. He said, for in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as what?
The angels of God in heaven.
Because the angels aren't in marriage or given in marriage. So there's no way they would be able to lay down with a woman because their body is not made that way. Why? Because you have a flesh that pertains to the terrestrial beings, and then you also have a flesh pertaining to the celestial beings. So just to touch up a little bit on that to give you some clarity, there ain't no angels laying down with women, but at the same time, in another context, angels can still be sons of God. See, when we talk about the sons of God, you just have multiple types, just like when the Bible talks about spirit, right? There's different types of spirit. The word of God is spirit, right? Your thoughts are considered spirit. God himself is a spirit, right? Your breath of life is spirit. There's different types of spirits, just as there are different sons of God. In the Bible, you have to read everything in its proper context to know which type of son of God you're referring to. So let's go over to Jude chapter 1 to talk a little bit about the angels that are not considered sons of God. Because you have angels that are sons of God, and you have angels that are not sons of God. And there's a reason for that. Jude chapter 1, and we're going to read verses 5 and 6. So when you get there, go ahead and read, please.
I will therefore put you in remembrance, though ye once knew this, how that the Lord, having saved the people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed them that believed not.
Because the Lord, he not sparing no feelings. He's a very simple God. You obey me, and you be straight. You disobey me, I'm going to put some recompense on you. There's going to be consequences for your poor decision-making skills, essentially. I will therefore put your remembrance through. Ye once knew this, how that the Lord, having saved the people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed them that believed not. We actually touched on that in Numbers 13. When they came back with an evil report of the land, and they lacked faith that they could conquer the land. And because of that, that's why Israel had to dwell in the wilderness for 40 years. A year for each day they went to spy out the land so that he could let the older generation die off and allow the younger children to inherit the kingdom of God. Right? But guess what? He didn't just do it to mankind. Hey, he no respecter of person. The angels got to get in line as well. Verse 6.
And the angels, which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day.
Hey, the angels are not exempt either. If they can't fall in line, they're going to get their own type of punishment as well. We see in here, it says, the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation. See, these angels were disinherited, I guess, for lack of better words. I hope that's a word. But they lost their rights as being sons of God. That's what it says right here. The angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation. They're no longer considered sons of God. Why? Because what are they? They are devils. You read in Romans chapter 12 how the dragon, which is also another name for Satan, he was able to deceive or take with him a third part of an innumerable amount of angels. And from there, they all just kicked against the Lord. Now, they still have to fall in line and do the Lord's bidding, but it's for the evil works at this point. They no longer are considered sons of God, and we're going to see that. Let's go over to our next spot, which is Job chapter 1. Because angels are still considered sons of God. And we're going to touch on that. Job chapter 1. And I think I'm going to throw in one more spot, too. I think we got enough time for it. Job chapter 1. We're going to pick it up at verse 6. This is talking about Job being an upright man, one who feared God and hated evil. It says he eschewed evil, which means to hate evil. And because of that, Satan came before the Lord, and he wanted to test. He wanted to basically put Job through the ringer, basically saying, hey, if you let me touch him, I bet you I get him to curse you to his face, curse you to your face. Now, we're not going to go all the way through it, but I want you guys to see who presented themselves before the Lord. So, Job chapter 1 and verse 6, when you get there, go ahead and read, please.
Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord.
It says right here in verse 6, and the Lord said unto Satan, verse 6, now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and what else?
And Satan came also among them.
And Satan came also among them, right? Because he's no longer a son of God. He's been disinherited. He's no longer a son of God like the other angels are. Why? Because they went against the Lord. They didn't want to fall in their line to do righteousness. Instead, now you got to do your bidding as an evil spirit, as an evil angel, and no longer as a son of God. Verse 7.
And the Lord said unto Satan, whence comest thou?
Yeah.
Then Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro in the earth,
right,
and from walking up and down in it.
And why would he have to go and do something like that? Because he lost his first estate as well. He is no longer welcome up in heaven anymore, right? He lost his first habitation where he can dwell in the heavens with the Lord. Now you kicked out. Like it tell you in Revelations 12 also, it says that he was cast out to the earth. That's hell for him now, because you used to be in the heavens in glory. But now you've been kicked out, you've been disinherited, and now you have to dwell among the earth. What do we read right here? And the Lord said unto Satan, whence comest thou? Where you been? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro in the what?
In the earth.
Right.
And from walking up and down in it.
Let's go over to Job chapter 38 real quick. We're going to read that one verse here. Job chapter 38 and verse 7, and then we're going to go to our semi-last spot. Job 38, we're going to read one verse 6, because this is when God is actually checking Job, because Job, which is a righteous dude, when he was going through what he was going through, he started to question the Lord, like, why am I going through such? Let me talk to the Lord and try to figure out what's going on, because he knew he was a good person. But the Lord still had to let him know, don't get beside yourself. You still not me. And he had to give him some questions and let him know, hey, we're not on the same playing field. So Job chapter 38 and verse 6. When you get there, go ahead and read, please.
Whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened?
Right.
Or who laid the cornerstone thereof?
Right. Whereupon are the foundations thereof founded? Because he's talking about the earth, right? If you read at the beginning of this chapter and keep on reading down, he basically asking, hey, listen, where was you when the foundation of the earth was laid? Like, did you witness that? Did you see how I was able to make this earth hang on nothing? Did you see how the clouds was brought up? Did you see how basically the earth, everything came from the ground? Like, you didn't witness any of this. You're not God like I am, is what he was trying to let him know. And then he keeps it going on that topic, and he says in verse 6, whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened? How does everything happen to just fit in place and stay in place? How do you do that? Job don't know. Why? Because he's not God. Verse 7.
Or who laid the cornerstone thereof?
Or who laid the cornerstone thereof, right? Who put the final piece together to put everything as a finished product? Verse 7.
When the morning stars sang together,
right,
and all the sons of God shouted for joy.
Because we're talking about the beginning of everything. Mankind wasn't present at this time. He's saying when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. We're not talking about man here because this is before man was even in the scene. But you still have sons of God. Why? Because angels are also sons of God. Those who are still being obedient to the Lord and following him in righteousness. Because they still have a commandment to keep. They got to follow the instructions of the Lord. But those who decide to kick and go against him for righteousness, guess what? There's a lake of fire prepared for you. We saw it says that they were reserved unto the judgment of that great day. Right? Judgment day. And we ourselves, mankind, we're going to go over to Hebrews chapter 1 to end it. And if you got a time, you can go ahead and kill it. We're going to go to Hebrews chapter 1 to end this. We're going to read 3 verses in Hebrews. But you have sons of God here that are angels. Those of them been disinherited, they devils. And us as man, when we are able to endure this life and become sons of God as well, which is going to be another conversation for another time, guess what? We're going to be able to judge the angels, like it tells you in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, because they got a judgment reserved for them. But Hebrews chapter 1, verse 13 and 14, when you get there, go ahead and read, please.
But to which of the angels said he at any time,
right,
sit on my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool?
Because he's basically because the writer of Hebrews trying to introduce you to Jesus. And Jesus was a man at first. He was made a little bit lower than the angels. But, hey, there was an oath unto him that he was going to be God as well. He was already God from the jump, but he died and resurrected and returned and was restored his godhood, right, in the celestial sense. And he had to let him know, hey, not everybody is like that. You got different levels when it comes to the celestial realm as well. Because guess what? He didn't grant this rulership over to no angel, like it's saying right here in verse 13, but to which of the angels said he at any time, sit on my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstools. He's really quoting Psalms chapter 111. When David was writing, he says, the Lord said unto my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemy thy footstools. Referring to when the Lord will come back at his second coming, and he's going to take over the world. He's going to strike through the hearts of kings. He's going to destroy this earth to rebuild it in righteousness, and he's going to establish his kingdom on this earth, right? But he didn't say this unto any angel. He said this unto Jesus. The Father said it unto Jesus. But what about the angels, right? He didn't say it to the angels. What did he say? What can we apply to the angels? Verse 14.
Are they not all ministering spirits?
Right.
Sent forth to minister for them who shall be heirs of salvation?
Hey, they are ministering spirits. They have their position to play. It says, are they not all ministering spirits sent forth to minister for them which shall be heirs of salvation? Really, they're ministering unto us. They're facilitating us in our walk to get everlasting life. That's their role that they play. Let's go over to our last spot, Hebrews 12 and verse 9. Because you read in Hebrews chapter 12, it talks about how at this point now that we've been given this grace and this understanding and salvation put on the table by the Lord because we have a better sacrifice, right? Because the Hebrews are sacrificing animals. Hey, we got a better blood than these bulls and goats. We got Jesus. So now we need to get all this sin out of us. We need to start serving the Lord correctly. And guess what? Hey, we may get chastised here and there for our disobedience, or we fall off the path a little bit, but guess what? We gotta receive that chastising just as we do from our physical father. Guess what? More so from our spiritual father, because he's doing for us to get everlasting life. So we're going to read this one verse, Hebrews chapter 12, because he's going to end it here. Hebrews 12 and verse 9. Go ahead and read that, please.
Furthermore, we have had fathers of our flesh which corrected us.
Right.
And we gave them reverence.
Hey, we are grateful for the beatings that our parents have given us. You know, hey, I've shared plenty of stories how my dad had beat me because it got me straight, right? And we brag about it, man. If it wasn't for such and such, because at the same time, we can look at this generation, a generation of children that aren't getting chastised, and we can see how crazy they are. And understand, man, we're grateful for the hardness that our parents were on us. So we can see it in the physical sense, how much more in the spiritual. So furthermore, we have had our fathers of our flesh, which corrected us, and we gave them reverence. Go ahead.
Shall we not much rather be in subjection unto the Father of spirits and live?
Hey, guess what? Aren't the angels ministering spirits? And what is God? He is the Father of spirits. So if he is the Father of spirits, it will make the angels sons of God. And I hope somebody got some understanding.